Hello, and welcome to Amati Insights. As you know, we do this calls every 2 weeks. We pick a subject that's important, that sometimes is in the news, but usually something that we have a strong opinion on, maybe exposed to in our portfolio or done research on, and want to share that with you. Of course, nothing we say is a recommendation to buy a stock or a fund, so please do your own research, seek financial advice when necessary, and examine the disclaimer that should be on screen at this point as we speak. The subject today is defense spending and defense technology, and it's very much in the news for obvious reasons. The war in Iran, ongoing geopolitical uncertainty in the world, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and consistent news flow about the growing defense spending around the world. Even despite negative headlines about UK's apparent complacency and increasing defense spending, we think it's inevitable that the defense spending overall will continue to grow. But there are interesting compounding factors accelerating the industry growth even beyond what the budget numbers suggest. And those are, we don't just need to restock the supplies, we also need to rebuild the industrial capacity in the Western world. And that's an interesting compounding effect. And the nature of warfare is changing. The nature of threats is changing. The nature of technology that is applicable in defense is changing. And so we have three particular areas that we're interested in as investors in the defense technology space, and they're space, cyber, and drones. And we'll unpack them in some more detail, maybe starting with space. So Graeme, lots going on in space. What is the latest?
Yeah, well, it's a vast addressable market, obviously. And if you think about just the military space market alone is more than $60 billion now globally, and it's growing very quickly, and not only in the US, although they have clearly dominated this market for a long time. Back in 2000, they were about 75% of global space investment. But that is changing now, and they're down to less than 60% now, as the rest of the world is trying to catch up. And and the reasons for that are obvious, I think, not just in the way that the US is behaving, but also in the need for countries to have some more autonomous control in terms of command and communication. Look at Starlink in Ukraine. I mean, these constellations of small satellites have proven to be incredibly important, and they're very important as well in terms of the way that we defend against attacks on satellites. So having lots of small satellites rather than a few very large so-called exquisite satellites, it's much harder to destroy all of those. And so that's the way we're seeing sort of space investment going. And that means that we need a lot more lift capacity or launch capacity. And obviously that's why SpaceX has become such a valuable company, although not a listed company. We have exposure here on the portfolio through a UK small company called Chemring. So Chemring is an interesting business with fingers in a number of different pies, but one of the key areas for them is their so-called energetics division, which is partly supplying propellant for rockets and also for missiles. So there's a big increase in demand for a lot of their products. Beyond that, a key part of that business is in advanced jamming of drones and detection and jamming and spoofing. And we'll pick up a bit more on that as we talk about drones.
Yeah, we're just sticking with the missiles. I mean, we've seen the new project called Golden Dome initiated in the US, which is the kind of bigger, expanded version of Iron Dome, which has been so successful in Israel. And the recent experience in the Middle East, again, reminds us that the anti-missile defense is a big issue. So that's a niche that we're very interested in, the kind of missile demand, including the anti-drone missiles. L3Harris, one of our portfolio holdings, is exposed there. They provide those things for space applications, but they also have a business called Aerojet Rocketdyne, which makes rocket fuel for those missiles that kind of shoot down incoming threats. And they will probably be a beneficiary of the kind of rebuilding of those inventories after the hot war in the Middle East is over. But there's also, in our mind, an unsolved problem of how do you economically counter drones? Shooting even relatively inexpensive missiles on incredibly cheap drones that you can produce in very large quantities doesn't feel like the right answer. We're looking at, I mean, you just mentioned electronic warfare as one of the options, but how do we see that kind of anti-drone warfare evolving?
Yeah, well, there are a number of different areas, as you say. Really, the key is to try and get the price down as much as possible. And so one of the areas that we're seeing being trialed more and more now in Ukraine are interceptor drones. So these are obviously much cheaper than firing a missile. And these interceptor drones require, fairly basic sensors on them. So sometimes machine vision. Typically, they don't need to have the kind of infrared and heat-seeking capabilities of the more expensive missiles. And it's really that technology, that kind of advanced electronics that makes the missiles so expensive. So these smaller attack drones or interceptor drones are becoming increasingly important. And the scale of, the drone problem is really mind-boggling. In the Ukraine, they're producing more than 200,000 drones a month just in Ukraine, and that's only one side. So, the US is talking about having a portable UAV or unmanned aerial vehicle drone for every infantry squad by the end of this year, and they need to ramp up their production a lot to get to that point. So, and it's, with the whole drone issue is not just about these small attack drones, it's about lots of other things. There are increasingly semi-autonomous jet-powered drones that are known as loyal wingman drones that sort of sit alongside manned fighters. Again, L3 Harris has some role to play here, but there's naval surface drones and also land-based autonomous drones, and this is why all the defense forces are actively investing to try and oppose this, huge wave of new investment that's coming here in terms of the attack side, in terms of defense. And so electronic warfare is really a crucial area of investment. Again, going back to our position in Chemring. But that sort of brings us to the third area, which is related to electronic warfare, which is cyber. Cyber, something we hear about a lot. We know M&S had a cyber attack, and we hear about it in the newspapers quite a lot. But in the defense world, this is a very significant problem, because everything in defense now is digital: command systems, logistics, weapons, intelligence, you name it. The US alone is spending $30 billion this year, or that was last year's budget actually, for cyber defense alone. So huge investment, and there's this constant probing going on. And we do have some exposure here on the portfolio, right?
Yeah. A long-held stock in the portfolio called Booz Allen Hamilton, which is, as we sometimes call it, the Accenture for the three-letter agencies: DoD, FBI, CIA. They are the kind of IT services and IT infrastructure support backbone of kind of the federal security world in the US and some kind of friendly allied countries. And the stock's been weaker recently because of, it's been kind of swept up in this AI-related sell-off, which suggests that IT services of any kind might be under threat from AI. But in our opinion, it's completely misplaced. They are the digital backbone on which AI is being implemented in various kind of federal missions, as they call it. And so they've been doing AI before it became a subject of a public debate and investor interest back in in kind of 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. And we see that as defense becomes more digital, the role of digital consultants like Booz Allen Hamilton is going to grow, not diminish. So we definitely see that as an opportunity. Unfortunately, the world continues to be unsafe and unstable, in some ways more fragmented. So this combination of increasingly relevant technological supply into the defense space, but also demand to counter these emerging threats, means our companies remain very busy, and this remains about 10% of our portfolio.
Yeah, so just to wrap it up there, we've probably run out of time, but those three areas: space, cyber, and drone, anti-drone, if you like, they're very interconnected, as a lot of things that we invest in typically are. Innovation tends to work like that. As one area advances, another area also advances, and you get this kind of these virtuous cycles. But the way we invest in these things is to try and find companies that have high barriers to entry and strong financial positions, so strong balance sheets, cash flow, And that's true for all the companies we've mentioned here and all the companies on the portfolio. But for that, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll speak to you in a couple of weeks' time with the next one.
Thanks very much.